Hey there, Zlatko here. Welcome to What is My Brain podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I get the opportunity to chat with fellow founders and business operators about their journey and how they got to where they are now, where they are going, and how they're going to get there. I'm planning on bringing guests and touching on topics such as running multiple businesses, executing ideas, and just spitballing about random topics and current events. It's a casual conversation, and that will hopefully bring value to anyone that decides to listen. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. Awesome. Emir, thanks so much for jumping on the podcast, man. I just, like I said, we connected probably about a month and a half ago on Twitter. I posted something about short-term rentals and being very interested in that space. And last names connected somehow. You saw my last name, and so yeah, man, got to chat with you, and I found your journey to be very interesting, and I think a space that I'm really interested in terms of technology and the short-term rental stuff. So I just go ahead and tell people about yourself, what you're doing, what you're working on, anything you want to share. Just go for it, man. I'd love to give people a little bit of insight what you guys do at Rabu.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And when I saw you post something about short-term rentals with the last name, I was like, oh man, this guy might be from the same place where I'm from. So also, it's not often that I get introduced as Emir, which is the right way to pronounce it. So not usually, being in the States, when I introduce myself, it's Emir. But yeah, it's Emir. Emir Dukic. But for those that can't quite pronounce the R, I'll go with Emir.
The R is actually really hard to do in a lot of languages. That if you're not Eastern European, that the R rolling is really hard for people. So absolutely. And also the thing is, in our language, for anyone that decides to listen to this, is you just say every letter of the name and you're golden. Like you can't fuck that up too bad. So.
The great thing about our language was that every letter always sounds the same, right? There's no rules. A Z is always a Z. You're always going to be Zlatko. That doesn't mean just because the Z comes after a T doesn't mean that the T is silent. It's always going to be
exactly.
And that's sometimes when I talk to friends, they're like, "Oh yeah, your language sounds complicated." Like actually, it's simple because every letter always sounds the same.
It's too simple.
It's mind-boggling.
It's too simple. Yeah. It's the other spectrum. But yeah, man, no, awesome, man. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. So my name is Emir Dukic. I'm the CEO of Rabu. We are a short-term rental investment platform. So we help real estate investors find and operate short-term rentals. We tell them what properties to buy, how much they can make, and then if they need our help, we also help them manage that property. We believe short-term rentals are a new asset class within real estate. And something that COVID has actually accelerated, right? Before COVID, people would stay at an Airbnb just for a couple of days while they're traveling because they didn't want to stay in a hotel. Now, as a result of COVID, the work from anywhere, work remote lifestyle has kind of accelerated need for homes that are more flexible. No longer are people just renting something for a year. They're renting through short-term rentals, things for a few weeks, a few months at a time, and just spending some time in San Fran, then going to Austin, then going to Miami, just being more nomadic because they can be. So we are helping investors provide that supply and then help tenants and guests stay at our properties.
That's awesome. I love it. Now, so let me ask you this. Let me just kind of take a little bit of a step back. How did you, and what part of Rabu did you build? Did you develop? How did you get to now building a company? I believe you said, if you don't mind sharing, you guys got funded not too long ago, right?
Yeah, we've had a couple of runs of funding. The way the company started, so it's funny that you're actually wearing a Man City shirt.
I'm a Man City fan. I told my girlfriend recently, if they win Champions League and if they win Premier League this year, I'm getting a tattoo on my thigh.
Yeah, well, she doesn't have to worry about it. It's not going to happen. Neither of those is going to happen. Just let you know, Liverpool and then Bayern, or Liverpool twice. Just letting you know.
We'll have a whole different conversation on that.
Right? Yeah, you can better rest easy. It's not going to happen. I have to talk shit just because
I know.
We can. But yeah, so my background is just like you. I'm originally from Bosnia. Was born there. My family was forced to flee when a civil war broke out, and we fled to Germany. that's we fled when I was 6, lived in Germany for 6 years, and then moved to the States when I was 12 to a city in North Carolina called Lexington.
Okay.
And that was, quite a bit of a culture shock. The reason for that is nothing against Lexington, but I'd moved from Germany in a city that was about 300,000 people, good sized city. And then everything I knew about the United States, what I'd seen on TV, right, with Miami, New York, Chicago, just like great metropolis. And then you move to Lexington, North Carolina, where the tallest building was like 4 stories and there's pig statues everywhere. And you're just like, what the fuck just happened to me? Where's all the stuff that I saw on TV? Like, what is going on here? So, first opportunity I got, I moved to the big city. So for college, I went down to Charlotte. I went to University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and got an engineering degree. Did the engineering thing for a handful of years upon graduating. And transparently, I grew depressed and grew anxiety just because for whatever reason, I just wasn't happy. Like I could see my career path and I just wasn't happy. And I knew I wanted to do something else. So
how many years were you in it until you like figured that out?
I think I knew right away, but like, at that point we just had our first child. You were trying to be a grown adult and try to be responsible. When you're, I remember one story vividly where, my wife had just delivered our son, our oldest, now 9 years old. He was, and then he was like 4 or 5 days old. She was just taking him in for a checkup at the pediatrician. And because I was so anxious, at the same time, before she went to the pediatrician, she dropped me off at my doctor to get me checked out because I was just having such bad anxiety. I just wasn't happy. Right. So, long story short, to tie it back to your shirt, this is not a bad story, just to tie it back to your shirt. Right around that time, I heard about a tech startup in Charlotte called Kick. It was KYCK. It was a soccer technology platform initially built as a social network to only talk about soccer. So being in Charlotte, which is where I was based, I was like, holy shit, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. European, when you're European, you're basically soccer's in your blood. You don't have a choice.
Exactly.
So I reached out to the startup, and the CEO of that startup was a serial entrepreneur in Charlotte, and he basically said, "Sure, you can do some work for me for free if you're interested in joining." So while having my engineering job, I started doing some social posts and doing some work for this company for free, and did well enough that they eventually brought me on. So started building a technology background that way. Started off as a business analyst and then, worked my way up to be a product owner. Then was basically head of product in the sense of like product in like helping manage the product, right? And then ended up being the VP of ops of the company when it was acquired by NBC Sports.
Oh, wow.
So joined NBC, but knew that was like temporary. I was only going to be there for about a year. So right around that same time period, that
was it one of those like acquisitions, acquihire things?
Acquihires, exactly right. Exactly right.
So you guys still had a contractual obligation to like be there for a period of time to like migrate everything over and all that. Okay, cool.
Exactly right. So my obligation was for a year, and transparently, like when you're doing something like that, you're never like fully bought in. You start thinking about your next step. You've kind of, just natural, right?
Yeah. 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door. It's like, what do I
exactly
do now?
right.
Yeah.
And that was especially the case for me because I knew kind of Kick was my step, like was my MBA in entrepreneurism, right? Now it was time to like do something on my own. So while I was at NBC, played around with multiple ideas of what I wanted to do next, and what we ended up doing just by happenstance happened to do during that time was my wife and I bought a house that had a detached garage behind the house and then a room with a bathroom above it. And, initially we thought that was going to be like a mother-in-law suite. As you know, it's very traditional in like Bosnian culture to have your parents live nearby or have a place for them to be. So we were thinking, okay, well, when my parents come visit, because they were at that point in Wilmington, North Carolina, when they come visit, they can stay there. But then they ended up moving to Baltimore, so they weren't nearly as close. So, what do we do? Decided to make it an Airbnb and just hoping for some discretionary income, something to help us pay the child care, right?
And what year was this?
Man, I'm terrible with numbers. This would have
Okay, no
been
worries.
2000, like 17 or so,
Okay, okay,
2016,
okay,
2017.
okay.
Um,
So not
and
too long ago.
No, not too long ago. So we furnished this room above our garage and put it on Airbnb. Um, Again, not expecting much, but next thing we know, we were making enough money off this 200 square foot room above our garage to pay the mortgage on our house. We're like, holy shit!
That's
Like
crazy.
there's demand for this. We were basically, what they call in some like real estate circles, house hacking without meaning to. We just
Hmm.
happened to be that way. We were
Yep.
living rent free, mortgage free, at our house. So we're like, okay, there's definitely an opportunity here. So that's how we got started. And then we ended up getting a few more places. My wife and I did.
Nice.
And we used to run everything ourselves, did all the
Yeah.
furnishing, all the communication, did everything ourselves, and realized that there was an even bigger opportunity than just like, your second, like a spare room that you have, that if you turn entire property into a short-term rental, you could make some, really good passive income.
Hmm.
Well, it just wasn't passive at that point because we were doing all the work. So
Right.
I brought on a co-founder just with the company. His name is James Strong. He's a full stack developer. And I basically said, hey, James, kind of had this idea. I've been executed on it with very much like an ops hat, kind of like, blood and tears hat.
Right.
But let's see how much of this we can automate. So can you come in? We'll do this together. We'll leave NBC. We'll raise some kind of seed capital, which we did. And let's start building this out and see where it's going to take us. So it was a long way of answering your question, but I started off more on the ops and the execution side, and then brought on a co-founder who I'd known from the Kick days to be the technical kind of brains behind it.
I love it. I love it, man. And did you guys have either of you have any experience like raising funding at that point, or how did you go about it? Because I'm curious, because I've actually never raised funding. Like I try to bootstrap everything that I try to get into. So I'm just curious on how quickly you guys were able to raise and like what that looked like on your end.
Yeah, I mean, very early on, we had to decide, did we want to make this a cool lifestyle business, or was there a bigger opportunity? Or so that's kind of
Right.
the
Right.
first question we have to ask yourself. And for us, with the returns that we're seeing, it made more sense to go down the venture route for this
Right.
particular project. So that was the first decision we have to make. It's like, okay, do we have a good lifestyle business, or do we want venture route? So we decided we wanted to go the venture route. So after that, it was really, transparently, it was a lot of mentorship, talking to any founders that I know, or that
Right.
I was meeting, kind of talking to them about the process, and a lot of trial and error. We're actually getting ready to raise some capital soon, and it's this would be our third round, and then you kind of start off with almost like a self-built CRM, right? And
Right.
I'm just
Right.
using Google Docs, but you start identifying people who could be good investors. You ask people for connections, and then you kind of start working that. It's really a sales funnel, right? And
Right.
what you're
Right.
doing
Right.
is selling. So you have to identify the kind of the leads, and
Yeah.
then start figuring a way to get in front of the leads and nurture them. So going back to your question, it took us a while. Probably 6 to 9 months. Again, I'm terrible with timing, but
Yeah.
six to
Yeah.
nine
Yeah.
months to raise the initial kind of round, which was $1.5 million.
And how much of the product was done at that point?
Um, Nothing that was easily demoable. Yeah,
Okay.
demoable. A lot of it was kind of like Zaps and kind of back end infrastructure that was built on Heroku. That you could show it, but it wasn't significant, right? It
It's
was
more like duct tape. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, very very much duct tape
Right.
together.
Nice. And how quickly? So it was just you guys starting it off. Did you guys start hiring pretty quickly after you raised that funding and all that?
Yeah, hiring was probably the hardest thing
Yeah.
as part of this. We did start hire. So it was James and myself early on. We had support from a few team members that kind of came in and out. A lot of people, this sounds terrible to say, think they want to be entrepreneurs, and they realize the kind of work and effort it takes,
Of course. Of
that
course.
it just doesn't
That's
work
a
out. And that's
truthful thing.
okay.
That's not even a bad thing. That's a truthful thing to
Yeah.
say, because there's a lot of
And
people. Yeah.
Right, and that doesn't demean. I don't mean that to demean them
Yeah.
or in any other fashion. It's just fact, and it's
Right.
also it's a form of like right place, right time. Like there's circumstantially it has to be the right
Right.
time. One of the
Right.
team
Right.
members that joined early on that didn't last long. They had a child, and the child had some complications at birth, so he needed to step away.
Right.
Others, took too much time commitment away from their family. So it's very circumstantial the way I think
Right.
about it.
Right.
But yeah, we started bringing on team members throughout the process, and that was hard. That was really hard because everybody always tells you it's hard, but then you're like, oh yeah, I would never hire that person if I was in those shoes. But when
Right.
you're in those shoes and you're trying to solve problems and you're just trying to move fast and figure it out, um, sometimes you don't do the proper diligence and you make some mistakes.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely.
we
We still
eventually,
struggle with that over here at an agency level,
yeah,
and a lot of agency stuff can be, more contractor based or whatever, and we still struggle at that. I think that's one of those things that you'll never have a solution for because you're dealing with so many different personalities and situations. Like you said, circumstantial, right? Like some people may be a great fit, but personal life gets in the way, or other things get in the way, or health, unfortunately. And so, yeah, man, it's tough.
it is. And then like the worst ones are the people that like actually mean really well and they work really hard, but like they almost instead of like I used to use this analogy a lot when there's a problem, instead of like building a bridge to get over the problem, they like consistently run through the bridge, right? Like they're just
Right.
like running to the wall.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, like stop doing that. Stop forcing yourself to like do the hard work, figure out the solution to it so you don't have to ever do it again. And
Exactly.
sometimes like those were some of the hardest ones to move away from because they were so like upset about it. But it was the best thing for them too, because
Right.
obviously they worked hard and you know, but it just wasn't healthy for them or for us to kind of continue doing the same things over and over again. So,
Right.
that was we're getting better, but you still strike out
It's
quite a bit
yeah,
on the
it's one of
hiring
those.
side.
Yeah, it's always one of those like ongoing optimizations. I mean, yeah, with this last round of hiring, we had to do probably the best round of hiring we've had, and that was simply because there was a process in place and there was a lot of things that we learned from previous stuff, and what kind of personalities we jive with and who a good personality is for this kind of job and this kind of job. So there's just a lot of that, and I think that's extremely important. But how big are you guys now? You guys are like 20, 30 people now, or how big are you guys?
We're at 30 people now.
Wow,
30 people, a little bit over a year ago, it was like 7 of us.
that's
And then we
amazing.
raised another round of capital in September of last year that is helping us take this next step.
And
Um,
what's been the biggest driver for your guys' growth in terms of like on a software basis? Like, is it just or you guys have salespeople out there? Like, what is the biggest thing that's kind of getting you? I mean, you guys are about to raise your third round, so you must be doing pretty good in revenue and all this other stuff as well.
yeah, the biggest thing that helped us late Q2 of last year, we released a tool called data.rabu.com. It's
I love
basically
that tool, man. I love that tool. Like I'm on that tool probably at least once a week, if not more. I've told so many people about it. I think that was a
awesome.
genius idea. Genius idea.
Yeah. That was one of those breakthrough moments. It's a tool we accidentally released for free. It's something I've been using internally, and James, my co-founder, CTO, he
Yeah.
accidentally made it available for free, and somehow somebody found it and started using it. But what it does, for context, is that you enter an address anywhere in the United States and a bedroom count, and it tells you how much that property could make as a Airbnb, as a short-term rental, and then gives you a list of all the comps nearby. So you can say, okay, this is like my property, this isn't. And then so you know how much your property would make. And it tells you through seasonality, like, hey, in March, because this is when most people come to San Francisco, you're going to make more than in January because nobody comes there in January. I'm just
Yeah.
making up numbers here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so it does that. It's almost like a Zestimate for short-term rentals, right? It just kind of gets you comfortable with what the revenue opportunity is. So we released that tool and made it free. Basically said, hey, this is a kind of an awareness tool, and it's also an abundance tool. And what I mean by that is we're big believers in like the rising tides lift up an entire community. So
Exactly.
by making this free and telling people, here's a tool, if you can figure out how to get involved in short-term rentals and what to buy, feel free to use it.
Right.
Nothing on our end. We're not asking anything in return. So that's, we have about 40 to, well, we just passed 40,000 monthly active users on that, 200 plus
Wow.
thousand searches, in a little bit over 6 months. So that tool has kind of been the hockey stick for us.
Amazing,
That's
man.
led to a lot of places.
Congratulations. That doesn't happen
Thank
very
you.
often where something like that accidentally goes out and starts to take a life on its own almost. And I know I'm telling you, man, I've shared that tool with many people. I had somebody, actually the CEO at my agency, her name is Grace, and I was literally just talking to her because she's planning on making a move to possibly the other side of the country. And I was like, I was kept telling her, I think you should try to do short-term rental in your place and like on the West Coast to see, and she's like, well, I don't think we could do this. And I was just like, you know what, use this. And she's like, oh my God, this is amazing, because she's a numbers person. And I told her
Right.
about the newsletter, which I text you about. I was like, dude, this, or emailed you. I said, this newsletter is amazing. You click on the thing, and my girlfriend, who I've been trying to like talk to about short-term rentals and different things, she comes from an accounting and finance perspective. So, spreadsheets to her are absolutely everything. And she's kind of like been very like, maybe I do want to do this. Maybe I don't. How much money can we do? And all this other stuff. And all of a sudden, once that spreadsheet came out, she's like, oh, this is everything. Like, this is all I need. And that Google sheet, the way it's organized and the way you guys give all the, repair and everything. I know there's probably so many layers to this, but tell me a little bit about the data aggregation and how you guys, and without sharing anything you don't want to share, but like, how is that information fed? How you guys decide those numbers? And at what point do you realize, like, at what point do you kind of get maybe even some sort of confirmation that is the actual number versus like what you guys have, kind of put together in that sense?
Yeah, great question. So what we do is we collect the data directly from the marketplaces that most people list their properties on. So Airbnb, Vrbo, wherever else the case may be.
Right.
So
Okay.
we
Okay.
collect that data on a consistent basis. For the United States currently, we've had plenty of requests to like go Canada, Mexico, and Europe, but right now it's kind of very US focused. And so we collect that data and have some algorithms that we've developed through our analysts that say, okay, take out on both ends these extremes, right? These properties
Okay.
are not good data sets. These aren't. And then we also have historical seasonality data. So what I mean by that is like, we know historically, what are the best months for short-term rentals in different markets. And it really varies market by market. Like,
Right.
for example, some people are surprised by this, but like Miami, Florida, you would think, it's really popular during the summer. It's actually not. It's like January through March through April, like the best months in Miami. The summer is completely dead because it's the rainy season. But like our data knows that, so we then know to tell you that you'll make. I'm just making this up, $5,000 per month if you turn this property into a short-term rental. But during the spring months, you'll actually make $7,500, and then in the winter months, you make $2,500, so that you have a proper expectation of where that is going to go. So that's based on both historical data that we have that we've collected prior, and then continuously connecting new data on how actual Airbnbs are performing right now, and then kind of screening out through some algorithms, screening out the outliers.
Oh, nice. I love it, man. I love it. No, because I think, and again, to my other part of the question, how do you go about actually maybe getting some confirmation for your sake of validation from like, how your data is working?
Yeah.
Like, how do you guys go about getting some of that back and saying like, yeah, actually, no, I made actually more than the 3,800 that do you guys just be a little bit more conservative and then hopefully like somebody can make more? How does that work?
That's a great question. So for us, historically, we have our own kind of performance data when we operate them. So we're
Okay.
able to compare our data to the data of the tool. For the most part, it's been highly accurate. Now, there's a couple of factors to keep in mind. One, the tool gives you the ability to select your comps, so you can say these are the right properties for me. So that is pretty important, right? So
Right.
let's say you pick a property, I'm just trying to think a good location out in San Francisco, like in Napa, right?
Yeah.
One could be part of a vineyard and it charges $500 a night, but yours is not, right?
Right.
So the
Right.
initial
Right.
search result will show you that $500 a night vineyard. That's probably not a good comp for you. You should probably not select that. So there's a little bit of importance in making sure you select the right comps. But if you select them, the data is very accurate.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And who, uh, man, I can only imagine how many people do you have just doing like data stuff like that on a daily basis?
A handful of them, yeah. That's obviously key to what we do. So we have
Right.
analysts, we have engineers, we have product guys that are kind of owning this product. We actually just added another product manager to the team last week who was part of another uh, short-term rental data startup called AirDNA. He was an early
Okay.
product guy there, and he just joined us last week to kind of take that product to the next level as well. So
I love it,
excited
man.
about that.
And what is the next steps for you guys? Where do you kind of foresee this, or I don't know, whatever you can share in terms of like, and the other question I wanted to ask you earlier, maybe this ties into it, is like how quickly can you expand into other regions, or even maybe go abroad to like, let's say let's talk about Manchester City earlier, UK or whatever it is. Like
Right.
how does that, like, is it a flip of a switch, or is it more like we have to kind of rebuild the data thing because of certain pieces of like pricing over there?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
to
there's
answer
also
the
a lot of
second part,
regulations and stuff and all
sure.
this stuff you
Yeah.
have to take
So
into.
right. So I was going to answer the second part first, but
Yeah.
answer the first part now because you kind of alluded to it. So the first part is what's next with the tool, understanding regulations better and just being
Right.
very clear with regulations on short-term rentals and making sure that that's part of the decision making. We do that through analysts, but we want to give you a front-end facing version of that. We also want to let you know how much long-term rentals can make as like a backstop, because a lot of people are saying, "Hey, if for whatever reason short-term rentals don't work out, how much can I make as a as a long-term rental?"
Right. Okay.
So we want to give you that comparative data set, and then, but the big project is what we're calling the buy box, and that is basically you'd come to us, Slotco, and you'd say, "Hey, I'm looking to spend X amount of money in this market and looking for this type of return," and then we start feeding you the properties that only match your criteria.
Oh, love it.
So then you'll be able to, buy things that match what you need. So that's what's come in the pipeline. With regards to other markets, it's at this point we could turn on another market at any point. There would be some server and kind of technology costs
Right.
for
Right. Right.
collecting that data. But we want to get a little bit further deeper in the United States first before opening up elsewhere, just because of the regulatory piece. We
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
zero to no expertise out there in other markets, and we don't want to set false expectations.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. No, that's amazing, man. And I was really, really impressed by the level of detail, and I was like, wow, is there some database that I didn't know about that these guys are just tapping into, and they're just feeding this in a really nice and sexy way, or whatever it was. But there's obviously a shit ton of work you guys are doing in the back end and making sure that these numbers are legit. So what kind of, and so where does most of the revenue you guys are currently making, where does that come from at the moment?
At the moment, it honestly comes from the actual management of the properties. So
Okay.
we've made the tool for free, as I mentioned. Um, so the managing of the property is how we make majority of our revenue. We've also recently, because we've gotten some exclusivity on portfolios on properties, we've made
Okay.
some money on the actual transaction of the asset. So, we just
Yeah.
helped an investor group acquire 43 short-term rentals in Charlotte. I get a piece of that transaction. We have a couple of portfolios we're currently selling for investors where we'll get a piece of that transaction. And that's just kind of a natural evolution of the product.
Okay.
But yeah, the property management is right now the primary revenue generator.
And what are kind of the pieces to that side of the business that what does that require of you guys in order to, now that you're all actually doing exclusive stuff, but what does it require of you guys for somebody to, use your management services versus somebody else, and what's on your end of the stick there?
Yeah, so yeah, we don't operate vacation rentals. We offer short-term rentals, and you might be like, "What are you talking about, man?" But vacation rentals, in our mind, are second homes that people have, and they're using vacation tenants to offset their liabilities, right?
Right.
So those groups actually have completely different requirements than an operating requirements that investors do. An investor buys a property, gets it ready, and then for the best return of the property, they don't care that their favorite bath mat is there when they come back, or that their family pictures on the wall, right?
Right.
They care that the property looks good, that guests are going to be comfortable, that it can stay there for a couple of days or a couple of months.
Yep.
So there's a lot of intricacies that are different there between the traditional vacation rental and then the short-term rentals. So our operations optimize for short-term rentals, for guests staying and owners never staying there. So anything from like how the property's accessed through smart home devices, to like how and when we communicate with the guests, the way we market the property, actually looking for guests that are going to stay for multiple weeks and months at a time versus just a couple of days. So
Right.
all that goes into it. It's all return driven.
That's
While
amazing.
still human, right? We're not like, we definitely don't do the things where it's like, we definitely don't do party houses. We don't, a lot of times people are like, oh, how many beds can we put in this room? And the answer is one, and it should be a queen bed, right? We're not looking to like create party houses. This is something that people can live in, and it's part of like a evolving culture of how people live, work, and travel. So those things are taken into account.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you, just on all of your knowledge that you have on kind of the data and everything. There's like certain things that it's like, oh, this is still the early days of this industry, or this is, we're kind of deep into it. Do you think short-term rentals is, where do you think it is at this stages? Is it more like, oh man, there's so much more to go and there's so much more opportunity? Or do you feel like it's kind of like already getting kind of a little bit saturated in a sense?
It's definitely early, but it's also much more saturated. Excuse me. It's much more saturated than it was when I first started.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that when I first started, people were getting 20 to 30% cash on cash returns on a regular basis. Now that there's more supply, those returns are being kind of driven down. And that's just natural. It's a natural evolution. Groups that were, getting 20 to 30% before are now getting, 15% returns. Right. The same thing happened with single family long-term rentals about a dozen years ago, right? Where a group figured out that there's a lot of demand for single family and long-term rentals. So they started buying a lot of them. Initially got really good returns, and then the returns shrunk over time, but it still has been the most profitable way to invest revenue, to invest money. So I think, to answer your question, it's saturated compared to where it was, 3 to 5 years ago, but it's still incredibly early. But the return numbers are going to shrink. But that's okay. It's still a great investment strategy, much more stable than, other things in the market.
Yeah. And are you yourself at all like investing still in that side of the like buying and like doing the short-term rental thing, or you just
absolutely.
Oh, you are. Oh, nice.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the upside in this space is significant. We actually just we're small investors in a apartment building in Asheville that we're converting into an entire Airbnb. It's going to be 20 Airbnbs in this building. Really cool part of town.
Wow.
That I believe people are just going to love, because it's better than a hotel because it's larger. Still can walk everywhere, and you can stay a couple of days or a couple of months. It's really up to you.
I love it, man. I love it. When's that going to be all ready to go?
It's in construction phase right now. So we're hoping for a June launch, but, transparently, probably closer to August is my guess.
Right.
Open for June.
That's awesome, man. I make sure you send me pictures when that's all done. I was telling my girlfriend after you and I talked last time about, North Carolina and all that stuff. We went and looked at pictures, and we looked at even properties there and all this other stuff. And so I'd love to go out there sometime. So maybe we could just stay at one of your Airbnbs over there.
Let's do it. I mean, Asheville is one of the coolest cities you'll ever go to. It's like
That's what you told me. What's so great about it? I mean, I think I knew maybe one other person that actually lived there.
yeah. What's so great about it? Have you been to Portland, Oregon?
I haven't. My
Yeah.
girlfriend has. I
Uh,
haven't. I've been to like Denver, Colorado. I
yeah.
went. Okay.
Yeah. It's just it's like a little bit of like a miniature mountain city.
Okay.
Well, miniature city, but it's in the mountains of North Carolina. A unbelievable brewery scene everywhere. Has some of the
Okay.
best breweries anywhere in the world. All within. I think it's got the highest um, brewery per capita ratio in the United States. So
Oh
there's
wow.
breweries everywhere. Really strong food scene. Great climate. It's like a year-round destination. In the winter, you can go skiing. In the summer, it's got a perfect climate. So great food, great beer, funky people, a great climate.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And what are some of the other hot spots in terms of Airbnb at the moment that you guys are seeing that are just like you would have never predicted, like let's say a year ago or 8 months ago, even or whatever.
Yeah, I mean it's primarily the southeast is really popular, right? So the Carolinas are great. Into like the Georgia mountains are actually doing really well. Savannah, Georgia is a great market. And then Florida is it's Florida, right?
Right. Right.
Miami is off the charts. The Orlando area, the Panhandle, all doing well. I personally love Texas Hill Country. So that's
Okay.
kind of the area in Texas between Austin and San Antonio. It's
Okay.
got a bunch of great vineyards, breweries, distilleries, um, great kind of like topography and setting. So kind of, and then Arizona too. So it's kind of the best way to describe it. You start in like Phoenix and then kind of go through New Mexico into Texas, down to Florida and up through Georgia into the Carolinas, and then Nashville, of course, it's high on the list. But that's kind of the magic area.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. The West Coast is obviously way too expensive. The East Coast is like way too expensive. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, that is exactly right. The West Coast is awesome. It's just pricey. Now you'll have some of the best Airbnbs ever out on the West Coast. Like
Right.
Joshua Tree is famous for having some of the coolest Airbnbs in the world, just because of the topography being close to the
Yeah.
national park.
Yeah. That's the other thing I was thinking not too long ago about places like that, Joshua Tree and stuff. I always wondered how many people actually go out because right now, like people go in and like, oh, I'm gonna do Uber and I'm gonna buy like 5 cars and I'm gonna have a fleet and other people are gonna be driving it. I'm curious to how many people in the Airbnb world, maybe you know this number, maybe you don't, go out and just buy like an Airstream or one of these things and just drop it somewhere in the ground and just give people like almost like a pin drop and say, hey, this is where you're staying at for like 7 days during this, whether it's a festival or whatever it is. I wonder if there's like an investment group or somebody that's doing just that, where they just buy a bunch of trailers and stuff that people are, whether people can't pay for it anymore or whatever, and they just get it for the low and flip it and change it inside or whatever they have to do. And
I like where your head is going with this. I'm transparently not my space. I'm not familiar with it. I know there's a lot of these like, excuse me, glamping websites, right? I
right.
think glamping.com is one of them. So it sounds like that's more along the lines there. I think there's some opportunity there. I'm again not that familiar with it, but
Right, right, right.
I can definitely see, especially for like festivals or events or anything of that nature. Um, I'm sure there's plenty of demand.
I know. Just driving a bunch of sick Airstreams into like a festival ground and just dropping them off and be like, "You're gonna pay $500 a night." And people be like, "Of course I am."
Of course, because part of the
Yeah,
experience, right?
exactly, exactly. No, that's really awesome. So, what's in terms of on the work front? What's kind of the next move? Are you guys planning on growing the company a lot more in terms of people? Are you guys able to do what you need to do for the next like few quarters with like the same personnel that you have now? Like where's all that stuff going?
Yeah, it's one of those debates we're having internally right now. It's like, how aggressive do we want to get? I think I mentioned we're likely going to raise another round of capital within the
Right.
next, six to 12 months. So it's really kind of taken advantage of the opportunity that's presented itself. We're seeing a lot of growth. There's a lot of demand coming to this place, and you know, to go back to your initial question, too, around like how and why raise venture capital. You raise venture, because of the opportunity that you see in front of you. But there's only
Right.
so much venture you want to raise, because by raising venture, you're diluting yourself. So,
Of course.
it's
Of
always
course.
kind of in the back of your mind. It's like, yeah, I want to be aggressive, but I don't want to, create $1 billion company that I own 0.1% of, right?
Right. Exactly.
There's doing a lifestyle business makes a lot more sense. I could make more money than that.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
it's right now, it's really trying to figure out that balance. It's
Right.
like how
Right. Right.
much money, how fast do we want to grow? How much money do we want to raise? So that we can create the ultimate outcome for the shareholders.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And how many different investors do you guys have at the moment, roughly?
There's about 30 different investors,
Oh, wow.
because the first round was kind of almost like mom and pop investors, angel investors.
Yeah.
Wouldn't call them friends and family, because before I did this, I wasn't in those circles. I don't come from a
Right.
background of a lot of money, obviously.
Right.
Having
Right.
to
Right.
immigrate here, and then I did not have a lot of rich friends growing up, so I was really kind of building that network. But
Yeah.
it was so it was a lot of initial angel investors, and then the last round was more venture based, and I imagine the next round is going to be probably a handful of larger venture groups as well.
And did you guys, when you guys started, were you guys already like, did you guys already have revenue coming in? Was that part of like the management that you were already doing? You were just using that
Yeah,
revenue? Or?
so right, so the initial management of the properties kind of helped, was like the proof of concept. Like, hey, look what I did here. I'm covering the mortgage on my house. Um, you know, it was really just taking baby steps. People just wanted to
Right.
see baby steps progress. I've never presented a full business plan. People are always like, I'm spending time on my business plan. I'm sorry, but that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Don't spend time on a business plan. Spend time taking steps, like baby steps, and then like measuring. Is there interest here? Then if that makes sense, take another step. I
We
think that's
talked
how you
about this on the
succeed.
first call where you just kind of got to go
Yeah.
into it and not do too much research, because if you believe something that you can get to it, like you just kind of keep going and make sure you stand out. I remember us talking about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. It's the paralysis by analysis piece, right?
Yeah.
It's just like you get so deep into it, you're just like, you see all the faults,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
something I remember reading this too about raising venture capital. It sucks. Raising venture capital is not easy. You're basically like running around town or wherever you are,
Yeah.
uh, asking people for money.
Right.
It's
Right.
not a comfortable conversation to have. Um, and the saying is like, it's very easy to say no to somebody, or it's very easy to find a fault, right? I mean, we all have significant others. It's like, I love my wife to death. She's perfect, but she's not perfect, right?
Right.
Just like
Right.
I'm far from perfect. Like there's always faults, and you got to realize that, just like with anything, there's going to be mistakes and there's going to be issues, but just like keep, like think about the bigger picture.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's the same thing when you're starting a business. It's not going to be smooth. There's going to be, issues along the way, but by taking baby steps, you'll actually, as many issues as you'll see, also, if you're doing it right, you'll see positives, right? You'll see wins. You're like, okay, there's momentum here. There's
Right.
some headwinds, but there's also momentum, and hopefully there's more momentum and there's headwinds, and you can knock it out.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that saying. No, and then the other piece is that what valuation are you guys raising at the moment, if you don't mind sharing, or if it's private information?
Yeah, it's probably, I can't,
Okay.
fortunately, I can't share that.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
No, that's all good. And then in terms of oh man, the question just slipped my mind. Um, anyways, we'll get back to that. But
Yeah.
is there anything else that you see in the short term rental world that like I mean, I just see like a lot of, on Twitter specifically, people doing some really cool shit with like, decorations. Are you guys doing any of that, like really extravagant, like this is an actual Airbnb in terms of design and stuff for the property that you guys are investing in? And
Yes and no, not to the level of some of these guys that do it on Twitter.
right.
And that you see, I mean, those guys are, all the props to them. They just take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Our ambition's a little bit bigger than that, where, we have to tie the line between creating a good like experience, because what you're building with Airbnbs is experiences, right?
Right.
But you also have to, with what we're doing, have a certain scalability to it, right? Like you got to have some consistencies across the homes, and you can't introduce too many unknowns. because
Right.
they'll just mess up your ops, right? You're just like, hey, this place we put this type of thing in, and this place we put this type of thing in. It's just like it's impossible to operate it. So the way those guys do it, they don't have a large portfolio. And I don't mean that in a negative way.
Right.
They built extravagant homes where one of their homes will make as much in a month as 10 of ours. Just different
Right.
strategies,
Yeah,
but they can
absolutely.
afford to do some of the more extravagant things. So there's multiple levels to take it. We work with designers to get the units ready. They all look good. I stayed at an Airbnb last week on my drive back from Charlotte from Miami, and this place was, excuse my language, but fucking bonkers. Like,
Really?
this is one of the things that we're seeing now. So this is a real estate developer, is building a master community of short-term rental homes that they're selling to
Ooh.
investors, right? So it's attached to a resort, a water park resort. And the home that I stayed in was 11 bedrooms. You
Jesus.
walk in, like 15-foot tall ceilings,
Oh my
extremely
God.
open layout, right? The kitchen has got like chef style appliances,
Oh
huge
man.
like 10-foot island. You keep walking, like 70-inch TVs everywhere. You walk through to a house, and outside there's like heated pool, ping pong table, foosball table, gas grill, and you're already like amazed. Then you kind of walk back inside. You walk into the first bedroom, and the bedrooms are really interesting because the bedrooms are set up like a hotel room, right? Where you
Okay.
have like a desk, kind of like, it looks like if you just took a picture of the bedroom, it looks like a hotel. It's got like that desk that's under the TV with the
Right.
one
Right.
weird chair, right? And then
Right.
but all done tastefully, right? And then an attached bathroom. But all 11 bedrooms are like, the best way to describe it is like 11 hotel rooms connected to a common area that's part of a house, right?
Oh my God.
But then, so the bedrooms are all awesome, but then the place has a arcade in it. I shit you not,
Oh.
a room that's
Oh.
an arcade. So air hockey table, Mr. Pac-Man, like a full
Oh my
racing
God.
simulation, like one of those, like when you go to the arcade, you can sit down and race a car, right, with a big screen.
Yep.
And then like a NBA basketball pop a shot. That's one room. The conference the I said conference room, but the dining room has got chairs for 30 people with a TV at the end. Looks like a conference room.
Let
Um,
me ask you, what made you stay in this place? I'm sure you weren't by yourself, were you?
no, I was with my family,
Yeah.
and we were driving back here, and I just got to know the owner. He'd be connected through Twitter, and he's like, "Oh, you should
Oh.
check out my place." So yeah, I checked it out on the way home, but
Oh my
this
God.
I wasn't even done yet. This place had a movie theater room. What else did it have? It had the garage wasn't a garage. It had a life size ski simulator in it. Like you put ski boots on, and you're on this like platform and a projection screen in front of you, and you're like doing a slalom down the slopes of I think one of them was a place that had the Olympics not too long ago. It was just like everything was just like, this
Next
very
level.
much like a holy shit moment. Props to them. I mean, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, we don't do properties like that, but they're developing these from scratch with the sole purpose of turning them into these types of short-term rentals, so they can do that kind of stuff.
And what does a place like
So
that go for when you say like renting out just one part of it or one room from it? Like what are they charging for some crazy shit like that? Because all the
so
accommodations are for everyone, obviously. So
yeah, so this is actually that they were renting this to groups, not to like, it's not
okay,
like you could rent it and I could rent it. This was all
right,
like one family together or one group together.
okay.
I think this one was about $700 per night, but worth every penny of it. If you think about, you have
Oh, I thought you were gonna
11
say like
bedrooms.
$2,000 a night.
This
To be
one,
honest,
I'm just telling you, that's what this one was.
right.
Um, you know, I think they were also a little discounted because there's still a lot of construction because they're developing more of these.
Oh,
But
okay.
the house was just amazing, very
That's
cool.
amazing. That's amazing. Well, that see, I feel like I haven't experienced enough cool Airbnbs. Usually when we go, we stay like somewhere in a city or an apartment. And yeah, it's cool in its own way, but like stuff like that is really interesting because I'll see stuff on Airbnb, even like some of their experiences, staying in like I said, like a sick Airstream, or staying, somebody
Mm,
not too long ago put something in Mexico where they had this like house on this like cliff that you can overlook. I don't know how it was just insane what people were doing. So I was just amazed, and I was like, I need to just have
yeah.
more like Airbnb experiences.
To me, people ask me, it's like hotels or Airbnbs. If I'm traveling by myself for a couple of nights, hotels are probably the better option. It's going to be there
Right,
cheaper. People talk about Airbnb being expensive after all the fees. It's
right,
true. I mean, there's no
yeah,
denying it. A hotel is more convenient if it's just me for a couple of nights traveling, right?
right,
But
right,
anytime I introduce my family, like because I have three little ones, like we
right,
can't stay in a hotel room. Or if I'm traveling for an extended period of time, I'm traveling overseas, it's short-term rentals all day, just
right.
because kids have their own bedroom. My wife and I, have our room. It's just so much more convenient.
And you can cook. You don't
And
need to go out all the time and all this stuff.
exactly right. And there's so much. We've had some of the most amazing experiences from staying in Airbnbs.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Do you have to travel? Do you travel quite a bit for the work?
um, I used to, then things slowed down, and then we had moved down to Miami, so I was traveling back and forth between Miami and Charlotte, which is where we're based a lot. But I just moved back to Charlotte, so I'm back here now. So not sure, don't have anything on the books right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And are you
Yeah.
guys in terms of Rabu and kind of like the big picture stuff, are you guys in the market for some sort of like acquisition down like 5 to 7 years from now, or even less?
You
Or
know,
is it more like the long tail, like let's ride this thing out, until that day comes? Like do you guys, I guess my question is, did you have a strategy when you kind of started realizing that this could be scalable, and this could be something, because I honestly, even just that data tool that you have, that itself is a like I said, a little gold mine that kind of put itself out there.
yeah. I mean, transparently speaking, yeah. I mean, the goal was always to raise venture capital and build enough business that somebody would acquire. Um, what that timeline looks like, I'm thinking probably next 2 to 5 years, but who knows? I
Yeah,
wouldn't be surprised if it lasts longer. It's kind of, again, I mentioned earlier that I don't have like a business plan. It's not like I'm going to
right,
do X, Y, and Z and then sell at this point. We'll just see how it goes.
right,
We'll see how
absolutely.
it
And
goes.
do
It's
you guys have do
too
you
many
guys
things I
currently?
can't control.
Yeah, exactly. And now, is there anybody doing anything remotely close to what you guys are doing at the moment? Because I mean, I haven't run into anybody really, to be honest with you. I mean,
There's a couple of other,
I heard about your company from you, so like I hadn't even gone down any
right.
rabbit holes to like even try to find that kind of
Yeah.
tool. But when I found it, it was one of those like I didn't know how much I needed this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of other interesting data companies that one of them is AirDNA. I think
Okay,
it's airdna.co. They focus more on like giving you market analysis, where we are
okay,
more focused on like specific property analysis. So they do a good job of that, and
okay.
actually just got acquired a few weeks ago
Oh, really? By
by a
who?
private equity firm, Alpine, I think.
Okay, okay.
So that's one. On the kind of like investment management side, nobody really does it the same way we do. I mean, there's a lot of like groups that do property management,
Right, but that's a little
big ones
different.
like that's different. We're kind of like a holistic. Hey, invest the money, and now that you've invested it, let us help you actually generate the returns.
Yeah.
Nobody really does that at scale like we do.
Nice, nice. And are you guys building any other like bigger technology pieces internally as well?
We'll see. I mean, we have some ideas, but need some more resource help first before we
Mm,
can go
right, 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 right.
too deep down that route.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. No, I think it's an amazing space, and my experience with it was I lived down in LA, came up here to visit my now girlfriend, and it was one of those things I just never run back. And I was like, I could rent this on Airbnb. I didn't own the apartment, so I was basically like subleasing it through Airbnb. And
Yep.
this was early days. This was like 2014, 15, I would say, somewhere around that time, maybe 16. And it was one of the things, like it was just making. I mean, it was like a $980 apartment, and I was making like 3 grand on it per month. It was insane. It was like in LA and all this other stuff. And I was like, man, this is crazy. So then my parents were just like, hey, we should buy property and do that up here. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And just never really got around to it. And then now they're trying to do it. They actually bought an apartment in Croatia. And I'm going to help
Nice.
them get that set up a little bit more. They're going over there in June to get it all kind of prepared and all this, and then take some pictures and probably try to,
Where in Croatia?
have you heard of Crikvenica?
I've not. Is that along the
Yeah,
coast somewhere or
yeah, it's kind
more?
of along the coast, I believe. I'm not exactly sure, like to pinpoint it, to be honest with you, but yeah, I know it's like there's like basically the place is known. Um, uh, for a very long time, it's known for like healing people who have really bad lung issues. There's
Mm,
something in the air over there where like the airflow, just specifically in that part of Croatia, they literally will take like buses of people who have like lung issues, and they'll keep them there for like a few days, and like it helps. Like, I don't know what it is. There's something in the air over there that's like with the water being so close and all this. It just, it's made for that. I don't know what the fuck it is. Like human made like lung, curation center. It's
cool.
crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So but yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I'm gonna help them kind of get that off the ground and make sure that they're getting somewhere with it, because I feel like that is the next kind of like level of things, is just to like have a few of these things where you can even use it to go yourself, and then when you're off time, kind of have it doing what it does.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is we've had a couple of investors say, yeah, and the few times it's empty, I'll stay there. Then nobody ever stays there because the money is just so good. And they're like, okay,
Yeah,
well, screw it.
right, exactly.
It's
It's
not worth it.
crazy.
I'd rather go
It's
stay with a friend. Yeah,
right. It's crazy. It's crazy, dude. So no, that's awesome. Is there anything else that you want to chat about? Anything on your mind? Anything that I appreciate you diving into all of those things about Rabu and where you're at, and it's amazing to see, man. I think it's like I said, I think you guys are doing some great things, and so yeah, man, keep that up, dude.
Appreciate it. No, I'm good. This was good. I'm glad we were able to connect, and I love what you're doing too. So, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for wanting to be on. Like I said, I'm very interested in the space. I'm so glad that, I mean, I learned a bunch of shit today too about how things work, and I was always, like I said, interested in hearing about how you guys do the data pieces and everything, and that gives me a little bit, a better picture of that, and makes it much more useful and all that. So I appreciate that. But hopefully, people will kind of it'll get them going. It'll get them to think about doing some short term rental stuff, and
Yeah,
kind of go
absolutely. I mean, again, baby steps. Easiest baby step is go to
maybe.
data.rabu.com,
And
type
let
in
me
an
ask you,
address, see
yeah,
how much you
go
can make.
exactly. And let me ask you, what are some that was a good thing you just mentioned about baby steps, and I kind of forgot to ask this, but what are some smaller things that if somebody doesn't have the upfront capital, what are some opportunities you're seeing that people can, like, I don't know, co-invest into something? Or is there any like platforms out there where people go in and like, I know there's a company called Arrived Homes, and they
Yep,
basically, you've heard about them, right? They basically kind
yep,
of like co-invest with their users, and you could put in $50, you could put in $1,000, you could put in
yep.
whatever, and you get some sort of like reoccurring revenue from that.
Yeah, there's arrived. I know one of their executives, Alejandro, met with him a couple of times. Good group. They do long term rentals. There's a new company called Here.co, I think. Here dot something, based
Okay.
out of Miami, that's not doing it for short term rentals as well. So there's solutions out there if you only want to be a minority investor. Um, you know, there's always the opportunity to you know what I tell people is like, see how you like it. Rent out your own house for a weekend
Right.
when you leave, or your apartment. Like, just try it out.
Right.
There's websites that we've used. There's a website, and I'm trying to remember what it's called. It might be hotswap.com, that we've done before, where we've reached out to people and said, hey, for example, and say, hey, Zlatko, you want to come down to Charlotte for a few months or weeks or whatever, and I'll come down to, I think you're in
Sacramento.
San Jose. Sacramento, sorry,
Yeah, yeah,
Sacramento, and I'll come to Sacramento for that time period, and we'll switch homes, right? So there's
yeah.
opportunities to just, especially these days in the sharing economy, there's opportunities to start doing things with what you currently have, and see how you like it and learn from it before, taking the kind of the big step forward.
Yeah,
into actually
yeah.
acquiring something specific for it.
Yeah, and in terms of like people that, let's say your people are homeowners. Let's say I can use me for example. What and I don't want to make any kind of like investment strategy or any kind of like financial advice or anything like that. But from perspective of like somebody owns a home, has some equity in their house, wants to go into a short term rental, like. Are there any like recommendations like, hey, look into these markets, or is there like places where regulations are just so terrible that you don't want to invest there just because you can't do the short-term rental stuff? Like, is there any kind of like baby steps people could take there that are already, kind of halfway in the game of just actually owning a house and having some equity in it?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to cities, I would stay away from major cities like a New York, San Francisco,
Right.
kind of like metropolitan cities where the hotel units are so strong that they've, put out past regulations against short-term rentals. The easiest thing to do is honestly play around with Zillow and data.rabu.com. Look at properties there, type them into the calculator, see what they're making. Subscribe to our emails that we send out.
Love that email, by the way.
Actually so when we send out those emails, we have a Google sheet that we include that gives you kind of all the numbers, all the calculations. There's a convenient copy button at the top that you can press, and then you can have your own version of it. So you can start plugging in your own properties with your own assumptions, take away any fees, change fees around. So there's opportunities to play around. And what we've seen is the more people play around with it, the more they realize the end game, and they start making kind of life-altering decisions. I'm like, oh man, this is projecting really well. Maybe I should save up money here or there, or maybe I should do and I'm not recommending this.
Yeah, right.
I should take a home equity line of credit because I have it and invest into an asset. There's multiple ways that can be done. But again, the baby steps are honestly just doing an analysis and looking around and like finding something that you fall in love with.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Cool, man. I think we can leave it there. And again, man, I think you want to drop you have your Twitter. Are you heavy on Twitter, or are you just kind of on there to like scour? Or are you getting better at it?
I'm trying to get better at it. It's not natural for me to be on there, but I know this powerful. So yeah, I'm at Emir Dukic, EmirDukic on Twitter.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, like I said, I highly recommend the Rabu tool. This is like just literally self-promotion because I use it. I'm not fucking telling people to, you know what I mean? So just drop an address, you'll see. And the email, I'm telling you, it's one of my I love, just like I said, that data sheet is everything that got me to convince a lot more people to think about short-term rentals. Let me just tell you that much. So
love it.
That should be one of your taglines. You want to convince somebody, open up the Google sheet right there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the team that put it together just made it really easy to consume, very organized. And then once you make a copy of it, you can make your own assumptions, right? So I highly recommend using that. It's free.
Yeah, exactly. It's 100% free. Cool, brother. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I'll let you know when all this is out and ready to go, and we can go from there. But yeah, man, I'll drop you an email. And thanks again for being on the episode. I really appreciate it, Emir.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Zlatko.
All right. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Well, you made it to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning into What is My Brain podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got some value out of it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button to get notified when new episodes are live. I'm out. Thank you.